Okay guys, let's do Tower Floor 59 again, and this time I'll be showcasing you burst strategy. Now I already actually gave a sneak peek of the strategy when I was making my store guide last week for Floor 59. And basically I already had the strategy sort of, and I know the strategy definitely worked because it kind of like counters the, well, not counter, but it took into account of the enemy gimmick completely. But I was lacking damage on my Nobara, so I thought, you know what, I'll just wait for a bit longer while I actually build up my resources in terms of both her grade and also her ultimate skill level, etc., and then I'll try again. And that's exactly what I've done, and I have to say, even though I'm able to do it, and I'll show you guys the gameplay later on, I'm actually disappointed with Nobara because I had my Nobara grade 15, so completely max her out in terms of her level, and also her ultimate skill is level 10 as well. Okay, with all of this and also a crit on her ultimate attack, I was still not able to break the enemy straight away with one attack, and that is actually disappointing because I saw Legend Max post his strat for this very similar strategy. But he was able to do it with only a one dupe zone Yuji, and it seemed to be a lot more comfortable than what I had to do with my Nobara because I had to wait for that RNG chance on the crit as well. So yeah, it kind of just shows you the power crap for yellow DPS at least, that how Nobara just like completely pale in comparison to Zone Yuji and Team Gojo in the spot for the top yellow DPS. And in fact, for this stage, if you have Team Gojo, it's going to be even easier because the main gimmick this boss is able to do is transmitting debuff, and Team Gojo is actually immune to that. Or if you actually have Zone Yuji, then like I said, please do check out YJ Max video. He managed to do it with one dupe Zone Yuji. Strategy is very similar. He just ulted on slightly different turn to mine because for, I guess that's just a characteristic of the DPS, right? So Yuji's damage is not just from his ult, but also from the attacks afterwards. So he was ulting one turn earlier than what I was doing with Nobara, because for Nobara, her damage all come from her ultimate attack. Like all the other stuff are just setting her up. So that is slightly minor difference, but the strategy behind it is pretty much identical. But yeah, anyway, very disappointed with Nobara, but she can still do it, I guess. So if you do happen to have a Nobara which is highly leveled up and highly invested, then you should be able to replicate the strategy with a bit of RNG. Okay, so what is this strategy all about, guys? So the main gimmick this boss is able to do is able to transmit debuff, and basically what that means is that when you use an AOE attack, any rather than just giving buff to the whole team, if there's any debuff on you, that debuff will also be transmitted to the whole team. And that's annoying because for this enemy, what's actually going to do is that he will be applying a damage dealt decrease to the first and second position every single turn. So basically, those two positions will always be having this damage dealt debuff. And I think it's like 80% debuff, which is obviously higher than any amount of buff you can give out yourself in a single turn. So that's kind of why it's just not worth it if when you actually nuking to apply any buff on your first and second character, because that will just be transmitting a debuff onto your main DPS. So it's just not worth it. And instead, what you want to do is simply before the turn you're actually going to nuke, you can still do all of your buffing as usual because that debuff only lasts for one turn. However, on the actual turn you're actually going to nuke, just make sure whichever attack your first two characters are going to do, it's not going to be an AoE buff. And basically in this case that I'm showing you, I will be using Yaga's ultimate attack, which is not an AoE buff. It does apply debuff, but the enemy is actually immune to debuff, so this basically just only does pure damage in this instance. Oh, and also trigger off my recollection, which is nice. And any recollection buff is not actually going to transmit the debuff, so it's still fine for you to activate this and activate any recollection AoE buff, so that's absolutely fine. But that's basically what my Yoga is going to be doing. And then the second position, it will be Mahito once he actually comes into the battle. And Mahito will be doing his ultimate as well, which once again is not an AoE buff. So basically, you won't be transmitting anything from your first two characters. And then the one who will actually be doing an AoE buff will be Nanami's ultimate attack. But because the damage dealt debuff is only applied to the first two characters, even though Nanami will be transmitting, he has no debuff to start off with anyway. So basically, he won't be able to transmit anything either. So that's basically how you can make sure you get the maximum amount of buff or damage on your DPS without worrying about transmitting debuff or anything like that. So basically, that's the main idea. You want to sync up all of your automata and have all of them ult on turn 6. Now, in order for you to actually do that, obviously you need to do two things, right? One, you need to make sure you actually survive all the way to turn 6. Second is you need to make sure everyone's ultimate is actually charged up. Now, for the first point, how to actually survive all the way to turn 6, enemy only does single target attack, which basically means if you actually apply this taunt reflection, which is going to valid for 3 turns, and also have Mahito only using his skill 2, which have that evasion, you will be able to bypass 3 of those turns already. And then for the first 2 turns, what you're going to do is your Toge is going to try to do a cheeky stun on turn 1, and then on turn 2, you'll be activating your reflection, and that will absorb one of the attack on turn 2. And also what Toge will be doing on turn 2 is also applying this ult increase but also damage taken decrease, and with this damage taken decrease, none of your other character will be killed off even if they get hit on the second turn anyway. So that's basically how you can make sure you definitely survive all the way to turn 6. And then as for the second point, how to make sure all of your ultimate are charged up by turn 6, basically if you actually try it yourself, you will realize Mahito naturally only is able to charge up his ultimate to 99% over 3 turns, which is very annoying. So basically you need the recollection, which is able to do AoE increase in ultimate energy, and that's kind of why I have Unity here. And then for Yaga is going to miss a tiny bit of ult energy as well, even with the help of Unity. So what you're going to do instead is you're going to play this recollection, which is perfect sync. Just have a passive of increasing your ult gauge that ensures you can actually charge up his ult by turn 6. And then also with this damage dealt increase buff, you can make sure you have as much help as possible for your actual nuke as well on your yellow DPS. So that's basically the main idea behind this setup. And like I said, even with all of this, I was still not able to break the enemy straight away with a crit. Maybe if my Nanami actually crit it as well or done a black flash, maybe the 2 of them together can potentially break the enemy, but it will still be very, very tight. But it's okay even if you don't break it, because you will just simply break the turn afterwards, and the enemy will be left with so little health that I do feel like even if one of your supporters get killed off, you should still be able to finish off the enemy with your ultimate attack, with your second ultimate attack from your Nabara. Because Nabara is yellow as well, she doesn't take as much damage as the rest of the team. So your Nabara should still at least survive long enough to charge up her second ult. And yeah, like I said, the enemy normally only have like 20% HP left. So even without all of your buffers around, you should still be able to wipe that off with your second ultimate attack from Nabara.
おかか、これはいけません。気持ち悪い。動け。そうです。おかか、これはいけません。気持ち悪い。防げ。そこです。やれ、コン。に、ゲロ。出番？待ちくたびれた。何これ？これはいけ。気持ち悪い。 では教育の時間だ。ほら、どうしたの？ここが踏ん張りどころです。このまま払うわ。やれ、コン。邪魔だ。やっぱりこっちじゃないとね。何これ？これは気持ち悪い。授業を始めよう。ほらほら、どうしたの？決まっていきましょう。やれ、コン。さあ、やっぱりこっちじゃないとね。何これ？これは準備万端。では教育の時間だ。ほら、どうしたの？ここが踏ん張りどころです。行くぞ。やれ、コン。やっぱりこっちじゃないとね。さて、準備はいい。今ならいい。さて、行きま。準備万端。こっからよ。行くぞ。総力戦だ。これで払い切る。領域展開。 地平円丼か。行くぞ。いいね。対象の7対3の点を弱点にする。私からは以上です。通例情報。ファンタジー。決めます。逃がすか。 邪魔だ。
何これ、気持ち悪い。
これはいけませんね。
気持ち悪い。
決まっていきましょう。
やるじゃない。友
相手の
何これ。
これは
達。気持ち悪い。
では教育の時間だ。ここが踏ん張りどころです。相手の隙を見逃すな。
何これ。
これはいけません。
気持ち悪い。
では教育の時間だ。ここが踏ん張りどころです。
何これ。
これはいけませんね。
気持ち悪い。
では教育の時間だ。決まっていきましょう。
おだ。
邪魔だ。一度引かなければ。
何これ。
準備万端。こっからよ。おだ。行くわよ。数霊呪法。かんざし。はあ、終わった終わった。